The next urgent question is ongoing interruption of water supplies in East Grinstead and surrounding villages. What I'm saying is it's the broader area of those affected. Please, this doesn't affect people in Northern Ireland, so can we just keep this to the members who are affected? If it doesn't affect you, I don't want to speak, because you've got 6 hours in the finance bill later, so I'm sure you could save yourselves. Right, let us go forward with the urgent question. Mims Davies.
To ask the Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs if she will make a statement on the ongoing interruption to water supplies in East Grinstead and the surrounding villages, and what support will be made available for those affected.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I'd like to update the House on the ongoing water supply disruption across southern England. But before I do that, I would like to pay tribute to my dad, David Mattinson, who passed away last Monday at Dove House Hospice, and to thank everybody at the hospice for the wonderful care they gave him. As a primary head teacher, he inspired so many people and was truly loved. He will be deeply missed by my sisters, my mum and myself, and all who knew him. And I would also like to thank the Nature Minister for covering me during my leave, and my friends and colleagues across DEFRA who met with the Chief Executive of South East Water and numerous MPs last week and several times over the weekend. I really appreciate the teamwork and solidarity, so thank you. This is an unacceptable supply failure, particularly for residents in Tunbridge Wells who face significant disruption for the second time in as many months. We are holding South East Water to account as the company responsible for the areas most affected. We have been clear in our daily meetings with the company that restoring supply must be the company's absolute priority, that every possible measure must be taken to protect vulnerable customers, and that those affected must receive proper compensation for the disruption they have experienced. Far too many people are unable to wash safely or have adequate sanitation in their homes. Far too many businesses are being affected. The supply issues in Kent and Sussex have been caused by several short-term factors, including a period of prolonged cold weather, which led to a large number of burst pipes and water mains across the network, and operational issues at water treatment sites caused by Storm Goretti. However, the disruption in South East comes against a backdrop of previous outages and continued poor performance by South East Water in maintaining a reliable service for its customers. It is yet further evidence that the water system is broken. For too long, water companies have failed to maintain their infrastructure and build the resilience needed to withstand events like this. Customers are paying the price for years of underinvestment, and this government will fix this through our whole-scale water reforms. This includes stronger rules on maintenance and resilience, backed by £104 billion of private investment for infrastructure upgrades and the creation of a new single powerful regulator. Thank you.
Mims Davies.
Minister, my condolences. Thank you, Mr Speaker. I am grateful. Again, no water across parts of Sussex and Kent. That is expected to continue at the very least until tomorrow for my area. Again, a shambolic response affecting over 16,000 households in East Grinstead, Ashurst Wood and some of my Wealden villages. Again, constituents left with poor, misleading or no communication from South East Water, leaving too many vulnerable people, even on the priority services register, waiting. Again, livestock owners struggling to get water for their animals. Many businesses have shut, and many schools and nurseries too. Again, water bottle stations have been poorly organised. Little or no clear provision for hard-hit rural villages areas, forcing residents into long dries with failures to open or running dry far too quickly, creating huge gridlocks, frustration and anger. Mr Speaker, all unbelievably coinciding with East Grinstead train station as the terminus for Gatwick Airport rail replacement buses, showing a complete lack of joined-up planning. The LRFs, Mr Speaker, are in place, but the logistics are failing. I ask the Minister, what penalties or sanctions will the water company face? What level of compensation, which my constituents and many constituents deserve, will they actually get? and with multiple and repeated South East Water serious failings in just the last 5 years, does the Minister agree with me and many? This water company needs urgent new leadership capable of properly addressing emergency situations and, crucially, restoring much-needed confidence in South East Water's ability to manage its systems, its infrastructure and water supplies, and ultimately give the service now and in the future. Thank you.
Minister.
I thank the Honourable Lady, and I am with her wholeheartedly in the anger and frustration that she feels on behalf of her residents for once again having problems with this company. As I've said, yes, the short-term factors were the 3s4, but the longer-term factors are the lack of resilience there is with this company and the fundamental problems it has, which is why one of the things that we need to address this more systemically is looking at setting those resilience standards. So you move from a maintenance system which is fixed on failure to a proactive system. But she's quite right in also raising problems around this company. They're already under investigation from the Drinking Water Inspectorate because of the previous issues in Tunbridge Wells. The DWI will be doing further investigations, and I've already met with Ofwat to discuss performance, my concerns around performance issues at the company, and I've asked them to investigate whether or not South East Water is meeting its obligations in serving its customers.
I'll just reiterate for those who weren't in, only those who were affected. Thank you. Only those constituencies that are affected where the water's been cut off. This isn't about the storm. We'll come back to the storm possibly tomorrow. But I just want to make sure it's these constituencies that are affected by this urgent question. Right, who wants to stand now on that basis? Helena Donald.
Mr Speaker, and my constituency was affected over the Christmas period by the water outage, and I wanted to thank the Minister for her support over the Christmas period, keeping me updated and briefing the water company. I really feel for the people who are experiencing these water outages. We have looked at this as part of the Environment Select Committee and trying to learn the lessons from the incidents we've had in Hastings and Rye, and it seems like those mistakes are still being repeated. The report outlined the need for more water stations, the need to consider the weight of 6 2-litre bottles for people who are disabled on the priority list, the fact that these learnings are not being taken into account by the water companies, and also the need for hygiene. Once we get several days into a water outage, people can't wash their hands, they can't clean and prepare food, they can't have a shower. So could the Minister tell me what the government is doing to put pressure on the water companies to heed the findings and the learnings from each of these outages in our constituency, that the lessons don't seem to be being learned every time?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend, and again for the leadership she's shown in her constituency during the Christmas period, and we'd all hoped to have some time off when she was having to reopen her office to communicate with residents. And she's quite right, we need to be learning lessons. We cannot have, and this is a thing that frustrates me, I think more than many other things, Mr Speaker, the same problems being made by the same companies when it comes to communicating clearly and adequately with residents, making sure they know who their vulnerable customers are. And I think this is something I want to look at in our forthcoming white paper, whether or not we have all of the powers that we need. But of course, as I say, the Drinking Water Inspectorate, I don't want to get ahead of that, will be doing their own investigation into the situation over Christmas at Tunbridge Wells and into the current recent one as well.
Come to Shadow Minister Dr Neil Hudson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, can I, from this side of the House, offer my sincere condolences to the Minister and her family for their sad loss at this time. Thank you, Mr Speaker, for granting this question urgently tabled by my honourable friend, the member for East Grinstead and Uckfield. The shortage of water supply in Sussex and Kent continues to have terrible impacts on local communities. Tens of thousands of homes have been without water supply, schools and libraries shut, businesses and in particular hospitality businesses have had to close their doors. Farmers and horse owners, Mr Speaker, fear not having enough water for their livestock, and some hospital appointments are being moved online. This is simply not good enough from South East Water, especially with repeated failures by the company and being the second major incident in a matter of weeks. I understand the distress, anger and frankly exhaustion many in the local area feel. They need clear communication, rapid action now and reassurance for the future. Yet we have heard from my Conservative colleagues in Kent and Sussex repeated accounts about poor communication and logistics from South East Water, including bulk sharing issues with Southern Water. This has also included announcements that vital bottle collection points will open only for constituents to travel, queue and then find out no water has been delivered. Can the Minister confirm when the thousands of homes affected by this shortage can expect their service to restore to normal? And can she provide guidance on what is being done to ensure that homes can access adequate supply, particularly vulnerable households, particularly in more isolated areas, in which travelling to bottle collection points is not feasible, when the schools can reopen, and what is being done to ensure GP surgeries and hospitals can deliver their appointments and care, and what measures have been put in place so that farmers and horse owners have enough water for their animals. Finally, considering the Cunliffe Review's focus on ensuring water supply, can the government confirm what they will take forward from that review to address this as a structural issue to ensure supply and consumer confidence for the long term?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the honourable gentleman for his kind comments regarding my father. So in terms of compensation, we've doubled the amount of compensation available, and this has had a huge impact, particularly in Tunbridge Wells, where people for the first time will be compensated for being on a boil notice. We're looking at introducing new standards, tightening resilience standards. As I mentioned earlier, this is moving from the system we have at the moment, which is fix on failure, to proactive maintenance, because part of the reason we have this problem in this area, yes, short-term impact 3s and 4, but longer-term impact, there is not enough resilience in the system. There are too many points at which it can easily fail. It was also raised by one of the honourable gentleman's colleagues around making sure we have bottled water in villages in more rural areas, and this is something I've raised directly with the company, because as you've quite rightly pointed out, for some people it's quite difficult getting to some of these bottled water stations. So we want to look at we're making sure we're having them in the right place, and I have told South East Water I expect them to be communicating regularly with their members of Parliament to make sure that they are in the right place and sharing that intelligence. I mean, I completely agree on the communication. There hasn't been enough use of social media. The website's been too slow to update. You know, there should be much more communication and clear communication going to members of Parliament. I mean, in terms of when we expect the situation to return to normal, I've sent the latest sit-rep out to all of the MPs affected, and I will continue to do so. And we're having another strategic group meeting tomorrow with everybody to see where the situation is in the next 24 hours. I don't expect this to all be resolved in the next 24 hours, which is why I'm holding another meeting again tomorrow. And I've said as well, South East Water should be phoning each individual member of Parliament impacted and updating them on the situation and what's happening. And then finally on livestock, because that was mentioned by a number of colleagues on the call yesterday, they are supporting 11 farms with bottled water, and they've made some deliveries of alternative water to farms across the region. But he's quite right to mention that this is having a huge impact on the welfare of animals, so it needs to be taken as seriously by the water company, and I hope that following this they are intending to do so.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Sarah Dyke.
Deputy Speaker, around 16,500 residents have been impacted as a result of the latest water outage. In addition, GPs and schools have shut. Vulnerable people, including those in care homes, are unable to access water, and people have been forced to queue for hours at water distribution sites. Unfortunately for customers of South East Water, this has become a trend. Over the last 5 years, the company ranks within the bottom 3 for water supply interruptions. Madam Deputy Speaker, experts have stated the potential for water shortages in the area has long been known, but terrible strategic planning, a failure to cut leakage and decisions to divert money towards dividends have distracted from improving infrastructure that should have been prioritised. So does the Minister agree with the Liberal Democrats that the continued tenure of South East Water's CEO is untenable, given the scale, duration and repetition of these serious failures? And will the Government commit to a full independent investigation to South East Water's operational resilience, governance and crisis management? And Madam Deputy Speaker, if I may offer my condolences to the Minister on behalf of myself and my Liberal Democrat colleagues on the terrible and sad loss of her father.
Minister.
I thank the Honourable Lady for her kind words, and I completely share the frustration. It would be nice to be in the House not talking about South East Water, and I feel I've become to know the Honourable Gentleman for Tunbridge Wells very well for the sad reason that we seem to be meeting all too frequently about problems in this area. And as I've already said, I think the Drinking Water Inspector will be they're doing an investigation into the situation as it was at Tunbridge Wells. One of the things they're going to be looking at is around the bottled water and the supply to vulnerable people. Has that been communicated well? Has there been a sufficiency? Is it in the right place? Because one of the things they sort of look at is during a crisis, are people getting the water that they need to? So that investigation will take place. And as mentioned, I've already met with Ofwat to share some of my concerns around performance issues at this company, and they are going to be I am going to be asking them to look at whether or not they think this company has met its obligations in serving its customers. And of course, depending on what they say to me, will be something I'll be deeply reflecting on seriously.
Mike Martin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I'd like to thank the Minister for Water for all of her help over the last month, and from myself and also from my constituents. Tunbridge Wells is yet again without water. We seem to roll from outage to outage. As we stand here today, there are 6,500 houses without supply. Schools are closed. Even more are closing as more areas go out of supply. The Minister knows from personal experience that the leadership at South East Water suffer from an optimism bias, appalling risk management, have no idea actually what's going on. The call that the Minister and I were in just an hour and a half ago, they said two things that were immediately proven to be false. And that's not necessarily because they're lying, but because they don't know what they're doing. Plainly, the leadership of South East Water suffers from groupthink. Last week, the EFRA Select Committee showed them to be negligent. The Chair accused the CEO of misleading Parliament, said his position was untenable. The Secretary of State of the Water Minister's own department has said she's shocked by Hinton's lack of accountability. Does the Water Minister have confidence in Dave Hinton, the CEO of South East Water?
I thank the Honourable Gentleman for his question, and yes, we have been spending a long time talking to each other, and I watched the EFRA committee with great interest, particularly interested in Dave Hinton rating himself 8 out of 10. I think what I think is really important is the Drinking Water Inspectorate have the space to do their investigation. I think it's also really important that Ofwat have the space to have a look at this company. But for this moment today, here and now, my priority is trying to get people's water back on and the system up and running, and that's where I want to focus my time. But I think there are questions to be asked about why we are back in this situation again.
Helen Whately.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I offer my condolences to the Honourable Lady on the loss of her father? There are around 5,000 homes in my constituency this weekend which were without water. That on its own is bad enough. But then we have how South East Water responded, failing to deliver water to vulnerable people, sending elderly residents on a 2-hour round trip to get bottled water, sometimes only to find that there was no water left, and ignoring the pleas from livestock owners for water for horses and other animals. Madam Deputy Speaker, this is a disgrace. It is not for the first time. The Chief Executive of South East Water has shown us he is not up to the job. Can I urge the Honourable Lady to use all and any power she has to move him on and get South East Water to appoint somebody who is?
Minister.
I thank the Honourable Lady for the question, and she did raise on the call as well. I know she was concerned about livestock and the impacts it was having on animals. I mean, water companies have a statutory duty to provide wholesome water. I mean, it is literally their job to provide that, and their requirements are set out in the Security and Emergency Measures Direction, so they have a duty to provide water, and that means in this instance of a supply outage, they have a duty to provide that to vulnerable customers and to people who can't otherwise access their water. And where we've seen failings in this, and this, as I say, this is something the Drinking Water Inspectorate are looking at, but quite frankly, it's outrageous and it's unacceptable. If there's a problem with the supply for whatever reason, and I accept freeze and thaw is not something the company could be held responsible for, but they can be held responsible for the way they've responded to the crisis. And there is no justification for their failure to get water out to vulnerable customers or people who need it. And that is something I will be picking up directly with the company as soon as we're out of this latest crisis.
Alison Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I would like to sincerely thank all the ministers for all their work over the last 4 days, supporting me and my constituents in Mid-Sussex. My constituency has by no means had the worst outages, but that aside, it still had a secondary school closed, multiple villages out of supply, a hospital out of supply overnight, and 1,200 homes last night. There are multiple points of failure, not just in Mid-Sussex, but right across the South East. And frankly, I've been shocked by the fragility of our water supply system in our region. Quite simply, our infrastructure is not adequate to cope with normal weather events that we should all be able to expect to happen in January. We are on the edge of the supply area in Mid-Sussex and East Grinstead. Will the Minister look at a duty to cooperate with neighbouring water authorities to make sure that those of us at the end of the pipeline aren't cut off in the first instance?
Thank the Honourable Lady, and she's quite right. It is a fragile supply system. We've had years of underinvestment in resilience, and we have a system at the moment where there are too many points at which failure can operate. It's not resilient. You look at other parts of the country where they're able to move water more effectively around their system. That creates a much greater resilience than we have here. It simply doesn't have the resilience it should. This is partly because of the historic problems around maintenance, how historically with all water companies they do fix on failure rather than the proactive maintenance, but it is partly because the system as it is set up at the moment does not allow that easy transfer of water across each individual water company, and these are fundamental things that we need to address through our water reforms and our change in regulation, because we can only build a resilient system if we're able to move water around some of the network. And on her other points around the impact on schools is obviously is appalling, especially at the moment. Many of them are doing their mock exams. I know my daughter's been involved in her exams as well.
Helen Grant.
Thank you. I have no confidence whatsoever in South East Water, and I've worked with them now for nearly 15 years. When things go wrong, and they often do in Kent and Sussex, their communication methods are absolutely atrocious.
Exactly.
Too little, too late, and often very confusing, when often all someone wants is to know when they can put the kettle back on or get in the shower. Yesterday, the Environment Minister, the member for Coventry East, who has worked extremely hard on this matter with the Water Minister, she actually instructed that MPs be given 2 hourly direct updates, and this has not happened. She also instructed that there should be a water station opened in Lewes in my constituency, where over 2,000 people have been without water. That has also not happened. South East Water are not fit for purpose. Their leadership team is inadequate. They are out of depth. And I hope the Minister agrees that serious changes must be made, including the removal of the CEO, David Hinton.
It's time.
Minister.
I thank the Honourable Lady, and I completely share her outrage when communication was specifically requested by my colleague, the Nature Minister, and where we asked for that information to be made available for members of Parliament, and also where the bottled water station was requested. It beggars belief, to be honest with you. As I've said, Ofwat are going to be looking into this, the Drinking Water Inspector are going to be looking into this, and I will be seriously reflecting on the information and the reports that both of those organisations give me.
Josh Babarindi.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. South East Water are failing Eastbourne. It is unacceptable that they left thousands of residents in Sovereign Harbour, in Hampden Park, in St Anthony's and in Langley without water supply this weekend. Unacceptable that they refused my ask to set up a water collection station in Eastbourne, forcing residents to travel 35 miles to East Grinstead if they wanted bottled water, and unacceptable that residents who were on the priority services register, many of them received absolutely nothing, including no information. So does she agree that South East Water are a busted flush? And does she agree that it is a scandal that water bosses like Dave Hinton dine out on enormous bonuses, salaries and the rest, while failing residents across our area. Does she agree that Dave Hinton needs to go?
Minister.
Thank the honourable gentleman. And one of the reasons we introduced the Water Special Measures Act and the bonus ban was to exactly do this, which is to ensure that people who get a bonus have earned it and people who haven't earned it don't get one, which seems pretty straightforward way of doing things in my mind. But again, this goes back to this point made by colleagues across the House. The water companies should be talking to the members of Parliament. They should be having those conversations about where do they need to put these bottled water stations, what is the most effective place, and they have a duty, not just they are meant, they can if they want to, but they have a statutory duty to supply water to people in the event of supply outages. And this is one of the fundamental things that the Drinking Water Inspectorate are going to look at, is how well or otherwise has the company supplied water to those people who are on the vulnerable register, and how well or otherwise has it made bottled water available. Because quite frankly, I'm as outraged by it as he is.
Katie Lamb.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I was very sorry to hear about the Minister's father. Thousands of my constituents over the weekend in Headcorn, in Staplehurst, in Coxheath, in the villages surrounding have had no running water. It's vital in these situations that we're able to share accurate and timely information. But South East Water literally had no idea what was going on. There was supposed to be a bottled water station in Headcorn, and for the entirety of Saturday, nobody from South East Water could tell me if there was even any water there. We were given multiple conflicting pieces of information, most of which turned out to be inaccurate. The only way we could establish whether there was, my team and I, whether there was anything there, was to go there ourselves. Does the Minister agree that this is unacceptable and makes a bad situation so much worse?
I completely agree with the honourable lady, and the poor communication is a theme that has run throughout the whole of this crisis, and again is something that needs to be looked at seriously when the Drinking Water Inspectorate do their investigation, and something that I hope Ofwat will be looking at as well.
Can I thank the Minister for her responses this afternoon? I'll allow a couple of moments for the front bench to swap over.